Well, hello there, guys and dolls, and welcome to another review here on The Theorist with your host, JC Botero67. And of course, we're focusing on chapter 16 of Revelations. So I'd like to start off by apologizing for the confusion in the last review. I know I said drossel, and I did not even realize my mistake until I posted it on YouTube. But I made a note that I meant dagger and not drossel. Don't know how I got them mixed up, probably because their names both start with D. But anyway, I will get it right this time. So Dagger and Ciel were taking a break from training. That's how the chapter starts off. And Dagger is taking a smoke break. You know, he offers Ciel a cigarette, and Ciel's like, oh no, like, that causes you cancer, that's really bad for you. So for those of you who have heard most, if not all of my reviews, there are some where I mention Black Rose Eden. She is another author from fanfiction.net, and she's best friends with Anime Cujo. And so one of Black Rose Eden's fanfics was Simply Meant to Be. And that basically revolved around Ciel being a leukemia survivor and fighter. So, I mean, if you have not read that fanfic, it's beautiful. Please go check it out. I'll provide a link. But yeah, I thought it was interesting how Anime Cujo kind of hinted at the fanfic, or like, I don't know. I don't know if that's what she meant to do with it by mentioning the whole cancer part, but I thought it was interesting because it definitely reminded me of Black Rose Eden's story. So, you know, they're getting ready to train again, and all of a sudden they see two people approaching. So they're not sure if they're bad guys, and, you know, they have to take them on, so Ciel's kind of nervous. But then it turns out to be Aloise and Finny. And so, you know, Spears sent a messenger pigeon to go get them because they needed supplies. And so Aloise was granted the opportunity to come along with Finny to visit Ciel. And it's funny because we all know Aloise is a crazy, lovable little nut. He gets infatuated with Ciel's sword for some reason. So, you know, he says like, oh, is that your sword? It's awfully big. Ever put somebody's eye out with it? And so I thought that question was rather interesting, because in the anime, second season of Kuroshitsuji, Aloise does poke out Hannah's eye, pretty much. So it was kind of interesting how he was the one who's kind of asking this to Ciel and bringing up the idea. So I thought that was really clever on Anime Cujo's part. So then they go inside and they go into Ciel's room, where he's staying in that chapel. And Aloise is still persistent on this whole, like, sword thing. So he's all like, it's really long and hard, Ciel, he admired, glancing to his annoyed friend. Do you get to poke a lot of stuff with it? A snort of laughter erupted from Aloise's throat at his own childish jokes. Do you have to use both hands when you... Aloise, really? What is your malfunction? Ciel almost shouted at having dealt with the immature behavior enough at this point. He loved Aloise, he really did, but sometimes the blonde just didn't know when to quit. It's a weapon, not a dick, the student reinforced, hoping that Father Spears wasn't anywhere nearby to overhear this insane conversation. And then, of course, Aloise, this is the moment where I loved him most, and I'm just like, Aloise, please be my best friend, because you and I share the same ideas here. So, here's another section of chapter 16 that I would like to read to you guys. So, you and Father Spears sleep in the same room? He asked, glancing at the neatly made bed a few feet away from them. If these walls could talk, Aloise stated thoughtfully in a dreamy tone, hands clapping together dramatically into his chest. They would say... He paused, letting the silence drag on as the finish to his observation. 50 Shades of Spears. No, he didn't say that, actually. He said, yup, nothing at all. And, you know, he's kind of getting a kick out of it, laughing, and... You know, Ciel's just kind of like, oh gosh, like, how could you insinuate this? But yeah, seriously, if anyone does write a fanfic titled 50 Shades of Spears, and it's a Cielium fanfic, I will read it. I won't write it myself, but I would love it if someone did, and I would read it. And that is the Cielium segment of the day. So moving right along, at one point Aloise tells Ciel, oh, guess who I saw the other day, like, outside church? And, you know, he's like, it was Sebastian. So Ciel just kind of has this, like, panicking moment where it's been a week, he hasn't even thought about him, he hasn't even called him, and so, you know, he's telling Aloise all these things. So Aloise is like, oh, why are you worked up about it? Like, it's no big deal. But then he realizes, oh, like, did something more happen? And so, here is what Ciel had to say about the night that he and Sebastian shared together. It was beautiful. He was beautiful. And I felt beautiful. Sebastian held me close and worshipped every part of my body, heart, and soul. Ciel released a heavy sigh, a sound mixed with longing and sadness. He kissed away my fears, and I told him I loved him, looking back to Aloise's astonished face. And then, he made love to me all over again. So, that was the first time that Ciel ever made love, and, Aloise is like, oh, that's good, you finally got it out of the way, but, he's just kind of joking around. But, Ciel still needs to figure out reasons as to why he was gone, why he suddenly left. So we'll be seeing that down the road when he and Sebastian meet again. And last chapter, 15, Anime Cujo was saying, oh, what excuse should he come up with? I, myself, in that review said, oh, I didn't really have anything in mind. But I did go and look through the reviews that people left. And so I wanted to kind of share some of those so you guys can see what other people are thinking and theorizing. So this is something new that I want to implement into my reviews. Like, I don't want to just focus on my theorizing. I kind of like to see what other people think. So then I can compare and contrast and be like, oh yeah, I agree with this or I disagree with this. So here is a new segment to the review. Probably more exciting than Celium for most of you. So I hope you guys all enjoy. And enough babbling from me, I'll go ahead and read these. So these are chapter 15 reviews, people coming up with reasons as to what Ciel could use as excuses for having left suddenly and not contacted him in an entire week. So this is from Jezebel Strike. Ciel should tell Sebastian that he's been sick. Boom, problem solved, Ciel. Then this comes from Meow Mew Chan. I think Ciel should tell him that he found out some news on the death of his parents and was out of town figuring it all out. Then Nana 300. Ciel better come up with a good excuse, or make up for it in other ways. Ehehe. And this next one from GarGoyl. Maybe that he's taken some private New Age self-development bullshitake classes deep into the woods, and he's decided to become a druid. LOL. Or that he suddenly discovered his karma was flunked, and was in need of repairing it by a period of isolation and meditation and yoga. Or some other stuff that would leave Sebastian completely confused. Smiley face. And this last one is from Kuro Otaku 292. 1. Family problem, funeral or something. 2. Kidnapping. 3. He's secretly a spy and does missions. 4. He's got cancer or some incurable disease that will slowly kill him and he had to go to the hospital and had no time to warn him. 5. He got lost. 6. ... in parentheses, ran out of ideas. Oh wait, that wasn't the last one. This is one from a guest. And they said that Ciel's excuse could be, I got sick, and after I recovered, my aunt sent me away for rehab. And this place didn't even have an internet connection or a landline. And I wasn't allowed to bring my cell phone because it would have interfered with my recuperation. Or, I told my aunt what we did, and she sent me away to a church in the mountains where I had to meditate and reflect on my sins. So, for the most part, I really liked what people came up with for excuses. Then there's another friend of mine also reading this fanfic, and she thinks that Ciel will probably tell him the truth because, he's an honest person, he doesn't really like keeping secrets, I guess, and, he probably wouldn't keep that from Sebastian, especially because he's someone important to him, and, they shared that special moment together. But she also said it all depends on what happens after Ciel's conversation with Spears. So, we'll see what happens. And so, for the author's note, Anime Cujo had this to say, You guys have all given me lots and lots of great theories about this story. I love to read them and hear what you have to say, so keep them coming. As for what is happening next week, I've got one for you. Who do you think killed Vincent and Rachel? Ciel is going to find out in the next chapter. So, of course, I've already talked about this. I've said that I believe it is Sebastian, or Claude, I guess. But right now I'm going to read a few reviews that some people left with their thoughts, and, we'll do a little comparison and contrast with what I said. So this one comes from GarGoyl. I think both Dagger and Father Spears really like Victoria's Secret. That's why they want to see Ciel's wings. But seriously, shouldn't he have some superpowers that don't involve all this effort? Like throwing things around with a flick of his hand or something? He should ask his priest about that. And Father Spears, hello, this is the 21st century. Swords are slightly outdated, haven't you heard? Maybe Ciel should tell him to watch Underworld, lol. As to who killed Ciel's parents, well, if they were killed by demons, that would mean Vincent wasn't such a great demon slayer. In parentheses, ups. So maybe he was betrayed? This comes from Kuroneko-chan, ×3. It would be a nice shock to learn that someone like Spears or Sebastian did it. That would mess things up, but... Oh, I know, you'll make it work somehow. Or, it could be Hannah. Or maybe better, Spears can lie and tell Ciel that Sebastian did it so he can separate them. And then Kuroneko-chan also said, oh, and no worries for the lack of fluff. The plot is awesome enough to keep you at the edge of your seat. But I know that you'll repay us with smut soon enough, right? Okay, this next comment comes from Oreo. I have this bad idea that Sebastian killed Ciel's parents, or that someone really close to Sebastian did it. That would make things really complicated. Raindrop Dew had to say, if I had to take a guess, it would be Angela and Ash. And then Kuro Addict said, I can easily picture Claude as the murderer. He hates being under Sebastian's order. He doesn't understand how Sebastian can be the general of Satan's army. He really thinks Sebastian doesn't fit in this role, so maybe he thinks he deserves it more than Sebastian. Perhaps because he has killed the previous demon slayer? So these are all good theories. I do have to point out for GarGoyl's review, I thought it was hilarious that he said Dagger and Spears like Victoria's Secret. That made my day reading that. But yeah, no, I like the idea of him mentioning that Vincent could have been betrayed, and that's how he died. I also agree that Spears could lie to Ciel and tell him that it was Sebastian, but does Spears know that Sebastian's a demon? Is he aware of that? I don't know that he is. And Spears is a man of God. I don't think that he would try and hurt Ciel by making up something like that. Of course, if it really was Sebastian, then he's not lying, but I don't know why he would bring up Sebastian. But I like the idea. I'm not saying I don't. That's a pretty cool theory. I didn't think of it. Angela and Ash was also a good guess. I had mentioned Angela and Ash previously in a review, saying that they would be fallen angels, whether they are already sided with hell or if down the road, when we meet them and this battle comes about between heaven and hell, that they will betray heaven at that point. But yeah, if they are already fallen angels, then it would be interesting if they were the ones who killed Ciel's parents. And then Kuro Addict, she's the friend that I mentioned earlier, so credit goes to her on that previous comment of hers that I mentioned earlier. I like the idea of Claude feeling he deserves the position of general of the army, because maybe he was the one who killed Ciel's parents, and, he didn't get the position, though. And then maybe Sebastian was more favored by the previous general and got that role, or the general was Sebastian's dad, and of course it went to him and not Claude, even though he is the killer of the Demon Slayer. If he is. So I guess we will wait and see what happens next chapter and finally discover who the killer of Ciel's parents are. So we'll all have to wait patiently until then, and I will definitely be eager to review chapter 17 when it comes out. So that being said, I hope you guys have a great weekend, and I'll see you all next week.